Hello, I'm Shannon, pictured here, and I'm going to be showing you around the research guide for your government class. Uh, I'll be showing you a few databases or resources you might use for research for your various assignments for Professor Hershenberg. So let's go. One thing you'll need to research is a person, an individual who you'll need to find some library resources about to talk about if they were to run for governor. So let's look. The first database I'll recommend for this is Biography, Gale, and Context. This is a primarily biography database that focuses on collecting biographical sketches and writings about famous people. Very seldom is there a person someone has asked me about that is not represented at least somewhat in this database. So, the example I'll be using for you is Matthew McConaughey. All right, all right, all right. I always have a little trouble spelling his name, but luckily this will anticipate that for you when it is like a well-known person. So, there's Matthew McConaughey. He's a known Texan, he is an actor, and he is also possibly going to run for governor. So, you can see quite a bit of information about him. Not everyone's going to have as long a career as he does, but the biographies are here, and this will tell you how many words are in the biography, and these are brief biographies, a 16-word biography. I did not know he was born in Uvalde, Texas, but you can see like this is probably going to be your most in-depth biography, so you would just click on his name and you get this basic info about his life. Um, and you can see it's from 2019, so fairly recent. You wouldn't necessarily want to use, a very old biographical sketch unless you're just talking about their early, their birth date, that kind of thing. But the more recent, the better because it'll reflect their new roles, um, especially when we're talking about an actor. Then you'll also see things like this featured content, and these are just articles that have been published in magazines and newspapers that are related to him. Um, Here's an article about him being a professor at UT, talking about film. That could be interesting. Now, if you scroll down, you'll also see newspaper articles talking about his hair transplants, perhaps, or actually it says his lotions, uh, magazine articles. So this is a good place to get some introductory information, some background information about your person, and also see where they've shown up in the news. Now, you might this is how I would start, but if you wanted to see if there was anything here more um, specific to, maybe something political, can I spell the word governor? There we go. And just see, you can try to do a little search like that. Like, okay, so we get a few newspaper articles about, basically he keeps saying maybe he'll run for governor, maybe he won't. But you can see a few of the articles here that reference his possible or denied run for governor, which also could have some information in it about like his stance on issues, that kind of thing. So if you were to want to use this article, you would click up here to click Cite, and this will give you an MLA citation for your paper. It's actually a pretty good looking citation. It's got this hanging indent where all the lines after the first line are tabbed inward, and it has the information in the right order with the right punctuation. If you want to email this to yourself, you can email the article to yourself if you're like doing research and you want to be able to come back to it to read it more in depth and collect a few resources. That would be an option. Something interesting, you do have to put in a to email address, you do not have to put in a from. So just ignore that. And so this will be a good resource for finding information about an individual. If you're looking for academic journal articles about an issue, typically they're not written about individuals unless it's looking at an author or, historical figure, Abraham Lincoln, past presidents, influential big time folks like that. But this database, Academic Search Complete, it has academic articles and magazines and newspapers. So sometimes it can be a good place to look for a topic that you're okay with finding resources of all those different types. You could look up Matthew McConaughey in here. You're going to get less of that straightforward biographical information probably, but you will see, news and magazine articles about him. You can see it spelt it for me, which was nice, but I do always want to specify that when you're typing something in to a database, I wanted to show you a better example. If you're typing something in and it's making suggestions, now in this case, this suggestion is useful, but sometimes things pop up there and you do not have to select from the list. Like, for example, just if I'm typing in gun control, it wants to give me all these little suggestions. They're not necessarily good. The library did not come up with these suggestions. They're based on what other people have typed in. So sometimes it's useful and sometimes it's not. So just keep that in mind that you don't have to click anything unless it happens to be what you were going to type in already. In this case, I was just going to type in gun control and not any of these other search terms. But that is something you can apply anytime that you're doing any kind of database searching. And so, but in this case, they spelt out Matthew McConaughey for me, and I appreciate it. And so, one thing you want to click is full text so that you only see articles that are part of our subscription to this database. And then you can see articles. Right now, they're sorted by the date newest, so the newest articles are going to come up. If you want to sort by relevance, the articles that have basically his name in them the most are going to pop up to the top. But do pay attention to the years because you might get some older stuff. But these all seem fairly recent. And these are articles about him talking about his career and that kind of thing. You could also add in, I'm still unsure how to spell governor. And so these are articles, only a few, that seem to reference Matthew McConaughey and his possible run for governor. If you liked this article, you can see it down here. You can also click on the full text over here. If it's a PDF, you'd click on it over here for it to download. And then if you want a cite from Academic Search Complete, you come over here where it says cite, and here's your MLA citation. And it does have a nice hanging indent there for you. And like I was saying, you can search more like academic topics here. So if you were interested in marijuana legalization, something that one could associate with Matthew McConaughey, you can click full text and peer reviewed. Peer reviewed means academic journals, a particular type of resource that's aimed at academic audiences versus magazines and newspapers, which are more so aimed at a popular audience, people who are reading these things for fun and not so much for research. So if we narrow it down to those peer-reviewed journals, then we're going to see that particular type of resource. This is an example of, they tend to be pretty specific. They're not going to say, here's everything you want to know about marijuana legalization. They're going to be focusing on a specific aspect, usually a study or survey that somebody has done. So, a critical race analysis of marijuana legalization and expungement in the United States. I think that relates to like expunging records of people who have drug related, marijuana related criminal records in places where it's legal now. So that could be incredibly interesting, but it is going to focus on this specific aspect of the topic. If you hover over this magnifying glass, you can see an abstract of the article and see that's just a summary, and it'll tell you usually if you're interested in this article or not. If you are, then you would click full text, and the citation tool's in the same spot it was before, and that'll be a nice resource for you. And so you can see, again, more specific stuff. Lived experience of addiction counselors after marijuana legalization. A lot of writing about it since some states it's legal, some states it's not. So there's a lot of research going on the topic. So if you wanted to do some more research on that topic, but you wanted a little more background information. You didn't just want those hyper-specific studies, which are great for helping you build an argument in a paper, but sometimes you need just some like statistics, some background information on sort of the history of the topic. Opposing viewpoints is a great resource for that. This is designed for your sort of entry level beginning research needs. So, did I spell that? So this is a case where you don't have to click something from the predictive text, but I was going to type marijuana legalization anyway. This is also a time to discuss keywords. You will also see a lot now, instead of marijuana, like in the legal writing, they'll maybe be more likely to use cannabis. So you can also try different keywords or see what you're seeing in the literature as you're doing research and see like, oh, I see if I search THC or I search cannabis, I'm going to yield some more results that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. So you can see there are some academic journals in this database, Opposing Viewpoints. It's not quite as robust as Academic Search Complete, as you saw before, how many articles we got there. This database, it's more about these viewpoint essays. If you want to see all of them that come up under marijuana legalization, you would click on that number, and basically they have essays written by the people who work for this database that take opposing viewpoints on controversial issues. So here's one there would be many negative effects from marijuana legalization. Now this is from 2016, so that was before a lot of the states have legalized it. So you want to keep that kind of thing in mind because this is going to be talking at it from before there has been as much data in the U.S. about states legalizing marijuana for medical or recreational purposes. So do pay attention to those years. This is interesting. This is talking specifically about Illinois and their legalization bill, but it is very recent. So that's a good place to look because it's going to have all the data from the other states as well. And then there's usually more like this over here. So here's 6 marijuana legalization lessons. That could be really interesting. It's from 2021. So you can see this is also a rich area of useful research. So if you wanted to use this, you would click Cite. Now this might look a little familiar because Gale owns Opposing Viewpoints and Biography and Context that we saw earlier. So it's laid out very similarly. So you click Cite, and you've got a lovely citation there for you. So those are the main library databases that I want to show you. Those are databases that the library pays for that you would not be able to access for free just through Google. You might be able to get to some of these articles, but a lot of times, even New York Times, local newspapers, Dallas Morning News, will be behind a paywall. You can look at a few articles, but then it'll say, nope, you need a subscription. This way, through these databases, you have access to a lot of paid resources that you just don't have access to for free as a everyday person, you get this special access because you're a student. Now, there's a few websites here under selected websites that you can also use, because when you're dealing with government, there are government websites that are going to provide you information for free outside of the traditional library resources. So here's the Texas Legislature Online. This is a website where you can find information about laws, bills, the whole process on the Texas state level of the Texas House and Senate. As you can see, the Texas House, the Texas Senate. It is a little nuanced how you must search it, because you'll see, this was, for me, what I tried to do. I went, okay, well, I want to look up something, whatever bills, I cannot spell, related to cannabis legalization. And so I just typed it in, and I get these results, which looks great. But I will show you what I had to do. That looked very easy, right? Notice that is not the most recent session. If you just go to the most recent session and search that, nothing found. To the next one, nothing found. So I went through a few sessions because this is something that's perfectly fine, did a little pre-research in the Google to look for, well, what bills have been passed? And then gives me that knowledge so that I can find it in this official capacity, find the actual text of the bill in the Texas Legislature Online site. That is sort of the case with a lot of government sites, is they are free. There's a ton of information, but they aren't incredibly easy to search. You pay with your search skills because they are free to access. So knowing the name of a bill or when a bill was passed that you're interested in can kind of help you navigate. So you can see there were actually multiple, well, actually it's this one bill, HB 1535, and then you can see all the progress of it. And so this would give you a good idea of how a bill like this, what the process is that's gone through. This has to do with certain medical conditions, the establishment of a compassionate use institutional review board, like cannabis use in the case of compassionate use medical needs. So this would be a way to see how a bill goes through and the different steps. So that could definitely be useful to you, but keep in mind it's not like this bill search. It is not really like a keyword search. The text search is how you would search for keywords, but you also have to pay attention to what session the bill made its moves during. But you can see when you go to the home, there's this search, which is what I did originally, but then you can also go to the text search and you can see a little bit more information. And then also, if we were talking about the Supreme Court, if you scroll on down, we've got some Supreme Court websites. This Oyez, I'm not sure if that's how you say it out loud, it is a good place to search for Supreme Court cases. It's put on by Cornell Law School, Illinois Institute of Technology, like a few reputable resources. And it's a .org, which is promising. Not all .orgs are legitimate, good research resources, but, giving a look at where a website is from, who makes it, helps you know if it's going to be good for research purposes. So you're talking about cases that are rooted in Texas. Well, the first one I think of is Roe versus Wade. So that's an easy one to start out with, because it didn't just start in Texas, it started in Dallas. So here's the case. You can get to it here. there's a lot of basic information here. You can see who decided and a nice little summary. If you want to see the actual case, that's going to pop you over to the actual like Supreme Court, this Justia site that has the actual text of the cases. Uh, which I mean, it's it's a long one, but that's the full opinion of the Roe versus Wade case. Um, Also, interestingly, from the Oyez site, you can hear the oral argument, um, which is pretty amazing from 1972. So that can be a very useful resource. And there are some other sites here as well. Another thing I was going to show you was now it's not going to capture every case that was in Texas, but if you do just search Texas, you will see cases where Texas is one of the parties involved. So even though Roe versus Wade was set in Texas and originated in Dallas, like Dallas courts, Texas isn't the name. Wade is the name because he was the district attorney, I believe, of Dallas County at the time. But you can see cases where Texas is one of the parties. All right, so I'm going to scroll down to a pretty famous Texas Supreme Court case, Lawrence v. Texas, related to same-sex relationships, a law that Texas had making them illegal. So you can see the case from 2003 and the basics here, facts of the case, the conclusions and everything, and then you can click view case and it'll take you back to this Justia site where you can actually read the full opinion or listen to the oral argument, and then scroll on down to the bottom and see the citation, which in government usually you're using APA, and you would just click on that there. I think I was showing you MLA citations before, but all these all the databases and a lot of resources like this have both APA and MLA. So that is what I wanted to show you. A little introduction to some of the most useful resources on your guide, but as you can see, there's a ton of information. That's a good way to get started, the things I just showed you, but feel free to dig in wherever it looks interesting to you. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me directly through here. I try to be very prompt with my responses. But if you are in the thick of your research and have a question and it's in the evening or a weekend and the library is open, you might get a faster response if you go to the library tab of CougarWeb and click Ask a Librarian, or come visit the library. That's the only time you're going to get a faster response. But happy researching, and let me know if you have any questions.